The first well-known figure on television was Milton Berle. In 1948, stores ran out of televisions because of him. Restaurants closed early and crime rates decreased on Tuesday evenings. Every week, 80% of Americans watched him. But when he passed away, no one was aware that he had cancer. He had become completely forgotten in the economic world he helped create. His own son referred to him as a monster in a book. He was in the news the last time because he touched RuPaul in real time on television. He was referred to as Uncle Milty, and he passed away by himself without the applause that had accompanied his existence. Eventually, Sandra Berlinger became Sandra Berle. She was an overly dramatic stage mother. Her parents forbade her from pursuing her dream of success in show industry. Thus, she instructed her son Milton to fulfill her wish on her behalf. When Milton was a young boy and demonstrated talent for entertainment, Sarah gave up her husband, her other children, and her entire life to make him a celebrity. Because of his fame, she even changed her name. To help Milton win over the crowd, she would purposefully be among them, laughing aloud. She may have been arrested for putting him on stages without his consent in an attempt to draw attention to him. Although it cost her much, she transformed Milton's life. While his father and brothers were disregarded, he was forced to bear the burden of her dreams. He claimed that his mother resembled Mary Poppins, the mother of Gypsy Rose Lee. Almost as soon as childhood began, Milton lost it. At the age of 5, he started acting in silent films. The Perils of Pauline, his debut film, was released in 1914. While other children played in parks, Milton worked. He appeared in almost 50 silent films before he turned 8. Among the celebrities he collaborated with were Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford in The Mark of Zorro and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. To get a career, he sacrificed his youth. In addition to caring for his family while his ailing father was unable to work, he had experience working in theater and film as a teenager. A lot of pressure was present. Milton's story also demonstrates how Hollywood exploited intelligent children, even at the expense of their happiness and health. At the age of 12, Milton's life took a turn for the worst. He then claimed that he lost his virginity because of a chorus girl. The theater was not a safe place for children. It was risky, there were adult jokes, and the nights were late. Despite his mother's constant presence, Milton was thrust into adulthood far too soon. No, it wasn't a single negative incident. It demonstrated that not enough was done by the entertainment industry to protect its young stars. According to Milton, the experience altered his perspective on partnerships for the remainder of his life. Sarah was responsible for much than only Milton's work. Berle quit becoming the show's star in his later years. Instead, he attended parties and charity functions where he was ridiculed for his age and prior accomplishments. In an attempt to regain control of the stage, Berle would make fun of or interrupt younger performers who attempted to grab it. It hurt to watch the king of early television become the target of a joke and cling to recollections of a different time. The fact that Berle passed away on the same day as two other Hollywood icons, director Billy Wilder and actor Dudley Moore, was an odd coincidence. All the other fatalities that week overshadowed the news of Berle's passing. The former chief of television was unable to write his final headline on his own. Not just for Berle, it seemed like the end of a golden period of Hollywood. His character was demonstrated at his funeral on April 1, 2002. There were perhaps 300 friends and celebrities in the church. Don Rickles, Red Buttons, Buddy Hackett, and Sid Caesar were among the attendees. The event was filled with memories, jokes, and laughter. His hat and trench coat were spread across his casket because he was so terrified of becoming chilly. Even after his passing, Berle continued to make people smile. However, Berle's story is not only a depressing conclusion. In the 1940s and 1950s, he was very popular. His Texaco Star Theater was shown on 4 of the 5 TVs, less than 500,000 TVs were in homes when he first started. They were present in about 26 million homes by 1954. He contributed to TV becoming the most significant aspect of American life. But in a matter of decades, he was forgotten. His impolite behavior was no longer effective. The medium he assisted in creating was passed past him. The old stars were unimportant to the new ones. To keep him in line, Berle's mother has pushed him onto the stage since he was 5 years old. She handled his entire business and severed all of his relationships. He had little space for a typical life. At the age of 44, he married. In his final years, he experienced health issues, and his notoriety was waning. The fact that the company had no room for its former heroes was also upsetting. Berle claimed that he only wanted to laugh for himself and no longer cared about making other people laugh. You can achieve amazing things with fame, but you can also fall from grace just as quickly. His life serves as a warning about this. She oversaw his romantic life as well. If he saw the same girl more than 3 times, Sarah found a method to end their relationship. She had a hold on him, making it difficult for him to connect with others on a genuine level. Milton didn't spend much time at school, but he attempted to prove that he wasn't a mama's boy. His desire to please his mother prevented him from avoiding women. He attended the Professional Children's School in New York, which began in 1914 for children employed in show industry. The school allowed him to keep up with English and arithmetic, but the main goal was to assist children continue working. Milton grew up surrounded by other young celebrities. They all competed with one another and were well known. Ultimately, he felt isolated from ordinary people. Instead of playgrounds, he lived in a world of acclaim. Milton's ability to steal jokes was another factor in his notoriety. In the theater industry, a good joke may sustain a person for years. However, Milton stole so much that he was known as the thief of bad jokes. Bob Hope allegedly claimed that he enjoyed watching Berle on television to gauge the success of his jokes. On air, Berle ridiculed himself for it. He became even more well-known in 1947 when he said on his radio show, "I'll have more jokes than I can shake a stick at." The name stuck. At the age of 21, Milton was regarded as one of New York's top performers by 1929. At large stages, he was the primary attraction and performed 6 shows a day. He performed in 553 shows throughout his tenure as the lead in the Ziegfeld Follies. He appeared on major stages at venues such as the Palace Theater. He worked in theater, film, and Broadway all the time. He became one of the most well-known comedians of his era due to his mother's hard work and his talent. In 1920, at the age of 12, Milton made his Broadway debut in the production of Florodora. He had been working for 7 years, appearing in films and even won a competition to look like Charlie Chaplin, so that wasn't his big break. His mother constantly pushed him. She once flung him on stage during an Al Jolson show to grab his attention. After such a childhood, Milton had to prove himself and was constantly seeking recognition. Milton surprised people in the 1920s and 1930s by dressing like a lady and performed comedy. Wearing women's clothing on stage was prohibited at the time. Milton nevertheless did it. He became so famous for his bizarre Carmen Miranda act that he was featured on the cover of Newsweek. His drag shows were so well known by 1948, when he was on the Texaco Star Theater, that there was a decrease in crime during the performance due to the large number of spectators. Long before it was trendy, Milton introduced drag comedy to the general public. Milton only made a few successful attempts. He had a run of poor radio broadcasts in the 1930s and 1940s. He started his debut program in 1934. 3 Ring Time was released in 1941, followed by Kiss and Makeup in 1946. Only 1 season was spent there. He even declined $25,000 a week bar gigs for radio, but nothing worked. He was dubbed the most well-known failure in radio history. A stage or screen was necessary for his style. Entertainment will never be the same after what happened on June 8, 1948. NBC broadcast the debut performance of Texaco Star Theater from Studio 6B at Rockefeller Center. It was the first entertainment program on television, thus it wasn't merely a new show. Additionally, Milton Berle became the first American TV star that night. The event featured live advertisements, music, and vaudeville acts and comic sketches. It was fresh, exciting, and enjoyable. Texaco was more than simply a supporter, they were involved in the performance. Each show began with a group of Texaco singers and cheerful employees dressed as guardian angels. After establishing himself in theater and radio, Berle brought a lot of crazy energy to television. He immediately got everyone talking with his fast jokes, humorous attire, and comical flair. Each Tuesday night was unique. Not only was it enjoyable, but this was the point at which television truly ingrained itself into American culture. Initially, NBC had doubts about Berle. They experimented with speakers including Jack Carter, Myron Amsterdam, and George Price. Berle's initial contract was limited for 4 weeks. Jack Carter even took over as host in August 1948. However, Berle's wild sense of fun and theatrics was too strong for anyone to match. On September 21, 1948, NBC officially announced that Berle will be the show going forward. He wasn't your average TV personality. He ruled television. He gained notoriety for his ability to interact with people, his outrageous attire, and his humorous comments. The story is told by the scores. At its height, almost 80% of TV viewers watched the program. We are unable to even consider such figure at this time. His popularity demonstrated that a single star could support an entire production and perhaps an entire company. Berle's enchantment made people unable to look away from TVs. Also, it sold TVs in a way that had never been seen before. Approximately 500,000 televisions were in American homes in 1948. By the end of 1949, that figure had soared to 2 million. After Tuesday's Berle broadcast, people were so eager to get a TV that stores would run out of them every Wednesday. It was known as the Berle effect. In addition to altering television viewing habits, his program contributed to the expansion of the television industry. By the end of Berle's show in 1956, there were over 30 million televisions in American homes. That was Berle's strength. In 1949, Berle delivered a joke that went viral: "Listen to your Uncle Milty and go to bed." For millions of viewers, Berle suddenly felt like family, and it was surprising when people referred to him as Uncle Milty. He was regarded by both children and adults as a family member. It demonstrated how profoundly TV could unite people and was more than simply a nickname. Berle was bringing people together, not just providing them with entertainment. For Berle, every Tuesday night seemed to be a stoppage in America. 8 o'clock in the evening. Closed their cinema theaters. Restaurants close early. People hurried home. In order to avoid missing the show, patrons of Lindy's in New York hurried to settle their debts. From 9 p.m. As the water level in Detroit's lakes fell around 9:05 p.m. It wasn't until after the show that anyone used the restroom. The Texaco Star Theater transformed how people spent their weekends nationwide, not merely by filling living rooms. The same event happened across the nation on Tuesday night. Berle was the world's best in 1951. He was employed by NBC and received $200,000 annually for 30 years, or roughly $1. Now, $5 million annually. Whether he worked or not was irrelevant. Simply put, NBC did not want him to leave. Even when he wasn't as well known, the money continued to flow in. When they spoke again in 1966, the sum decreased, but the agreement remains one of the greatest in TV history. By the season of 1950-51, Berle's show had become immensely popular. It received a score of 61 from Nielsen. More than 6 out of 10 TV-equipped homes watched him each week. The other shows today aren't even comparable. Back then, Texaco Star Theater was more than just a play. It was a national sensation. Because it featured vaudeville, guest stars, and Berle's outrageous attire, it was an essential television program. Prior to his departure from the show in 1956, TV sales had increased from 500,000 to over 30 million. Berle has a limitless sense of humor. He disguised himself as a woman to get lots of laughs. The startling fact is that, in many jurisdictions during the 1950s, cross-dressing was illegal. He made sure everyone knew he wasn't gay in order to avoid issues. As a result, he was able to avoid consequences for actions that would have put other persons in legal hot water. His dress presentations were not only hilarious, but they also defied convention and challenged preconceived notions about gender and comedy. Berle made the correct decision as well. They attempted to stop the Four Step Brothers, a black dance group, from performing, but Berle refused to stop them. Just prior to the performance, he said to Texaco, "If they don't go on, I don't go on." Texaco concurred. When the Four Step Brothers performed live, they broke the color barrier for variety programs. Black artists nationwide were able to find employment because to such courageous action. Milton Berle lived a life filled with heartbreak, treachery, love, and fame. His first marriage was to showgirl Joyce Matthews in 1941. It was a complete catastrophe from the start. In addition to the husband and wife, Berle's mother, Sarah, was also at odds. She was the stereotypical overbearing stage mother. Gypsy Rose Lee's mother resembled Mary Poppins, Berle joked. Berle felt conflicted. He had no idea what would please his wife or mother. The marriage ended in 1947, but the problems continued. In 1949, Berle and Matthews made another attempt. They remarried in the intention of starting over, but nothing had changed. The same emotional tug-of-war prompted another split in 1950. The destruction was extensive. In the house of her married boyfriend, Billy Rose, Matthews attempted suicide following their second breakup. Berle looked horrible in the article. He later claimed that his mother's dominance had destroyed his marriages and driven him to always have affairs as a sign of his manliness. Whether or not these affairs were real, rumors about them proliferated. Berle claimed to have dated celebrities like Dorothy Kilgallen, Marilyn Monroe, Amy Semple McPherson, and Betty Hutton. The narrative of Monroe started on the Ladies of the Chorus set in 1948. She was praised by Berle, who described her as a self-sufficient lady. However, Monroe said she had no memory of being with him at all when they collaborated on the 1960 film Let's Make Love. That must have been painful. His remarks regarding the well-known Pastor McPherson were the most bizarre. Berle described covert talks in his book, but McPherson's family and biographers denied this. Whether accurate or not, these tales depicted a guy who was ready to leave his mother's shadow and prove he wasn't only a mommy's boy. Berle married Ruth Cosgrove in 1953 following 2 unsuccessful marriages to Matthews. His age was 45. It appeared that Berle had at last found peace, and Ruth was a famous publicist. Ruth passed away from cancer in 1989 after 36 years of marriage. The scars from his mother's might, however, never healed. Even this marriage has been impacted by her meddling, according to Berle. Because he was constantly battling previous concerns and craved attention from women, he found it difficult to become close to others. Although he and Ruth were stable in public and had adopted a kid, things were more complicated than they appeared. He fought with himself all the time. Then the startling secret was revealed. Berle and Junior Standish, a showgirl, had a son named Bob Williams around 1951. For decades, Berle falsely claimed to have only adopted children. As a child, Bob saw Berle at gatherings, but he was unaware of the truth. Because Berle respected Bob's mother, he added, he kept it a secret. The truth was revealed in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when Berle was in his 80s. Repairing the damage was too late. The news further upended Berle's private life, demonstrating once more how his world was created by lies. Then came the descent. Television first appeared in rural America at the beginning of the 1950s. Berle's fast city quips were disliked by small-town residents. 80% of the audience was present when he was at his best. By 1954 to 1955, his show had dropped to 13th position. The tournament was no longer sponsored by Texaco. NBC tried everything, but it didn't help. The former head of television was unable to engage with the new national viewership. In the heartland, his urban approach didn't work. He met his demise because to home shows like I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners, which were humorous about families. I Love Lucy achieved the highest number of viewers for 3 consecutive years, reaching up to 67 million. 3, reaching over 15 million homes. Berle's show dropped to 6th place in 1953 and continued to decline in 1954. In the US, people had moved on. Earlier, there were indications of difficulty. In 1952 to 1953, his show dropped from the top spot to 3rd place, behind Arthur Godfrey's. It was the end of an era, not merely a decline of viewers. Despite her fame, Berle's fortunes turned against her. He fell hard and quickly. When Berle landed a contract with NBC, things became worse. Whether he worked or not, they paid him $200,000 annually for 30 years, or more than $2 million today, after hiring him in 1951. When his fame faded, NBC found itself in a bind. They deducted his salary in 1955 and placed him on anything they could find. Ultimately, he presented programs like Jackpot Bowling in order to complete the task. With what was once a terrific bargain, the network had a horrible period. The final blow was overexposure. His speech, his humor, and his face were everywhere. For people, he was growing too old. What felt fresh at first soon became stale. When he made an excessive effort to win back fans, things got worse. He was the first well-known individual to get weary of television. His decline demonstrated that in the fast-paced world of television, even the biggest stars may vanish in an instant. Once referred to as Mr. Television, Milton Berle was the star of what many still consider to be Saturday Night Live's worst show in 1979 at the age of 71. Berle had the assurance of someone who had already dominated theater and early television when he entered Studio 8H. He failed in his attempt to blend in with SNL's cutting-edge new look. In his introductory remarks, he made numerous jokes about LGBT people and racism. He was cruel to homosexual people, Arabs, and Puerto Ricans, and he made offensive remarks about Dolly Parton's body. The audience was startled. Gilda Radner and John Belushi were among the group who watched in horror. Ultimately, author Rosie Schuster described it as akin to repeatedly viewing the same humorous train accident in slow motion. Berle's jokes were offensive and outdated even in the 1970s. It was obvious that he had no place on that stage. There was no improvement after that. After the show ended, Berle sang "September Song" again. Then an odd thing occurred. 10 of the family members and friends seated on the balcony stood up and gave a loud cheer. There was tight silence among the remainder of the crowd. Berle had arranged everything. He even told producer Lorne Michaels during a break that the standing ovation was a hoax. Michaels was taken aback. He refused to let the balcony be seen by the cameras. The incident gained notoriety because it demonstrated Berle's intense need for attention and his severe inability to read the room. Berle's contract with SNL was finalized that evening. Lorne Michaels banned him for life. The first and only host to be removed from the show was Berle. It took decades for his show to return. Even with difficult guests on Saturday Night Live, no one had ever crashed and burned like Berle. When the show returned in 2003, it was a reminder that, regardless of your level of fame, SNL wanted you to be kind and adaptable. Berle's downfall was not limited to Saturday Night Live. NBC was quite interested in hiring him in 1959. After his prime, they placed him on Jackpot Bowling. This strange show was broadcast prior to 1961. Everyone was aware that Berle's true motivation for being there was to allow NBC to terminate his costly contract. He spoke with celebrities who played for charity and attempted to make bowling matches more humorous. It was unfortunate for a man who was once regarded as the king of television that the show terminated after 6 months. During his week on Saturday Night Live, Berle's arrogance was unbearable. He performed some of his old vaudeville performances after chuckling at the writer's intentions and stating, "This might be too hard for you." He mugged in ways that felt so terribly outdated for the camera. Lorne Michaels later claimed that they had anticipated a negative outcome from the beginning. Berle's drive to be the focus of attention spoiled the show. Another lesson that will stick with you is what occurs when a talent doesn't want to change. The story was not just about Berle's public errors. My Father, Uncle Milty, a scathing autobiography written by his adoptive son William, was published in 1999. Hollywood was surprised. William mentioned that he had neglected his sentiments for years. He wrote about a father who valued his work, girls, and video games over his own child. William was only 16 when Berle paid a sex worker to steal his virginity. This was a unique story. For William, this was one of the few occasions when his father appeared to be concerned. He was upset and perplexed by this chilly and commercial moment since they were no longer together. But William did more than that. He described how Berle would heavily conceal his age by wearing cosmetics before going out. He mockingly referred to his father as a conceited has-been who was mired in the past. The last item that caused them to argue was the book. Berle never spoke to his son again because he was so angry with him. Until his death in 2002, he fulfilled his commitment. Even after death, the rage persisted. William made ominous jokes about his father's grave since he didn't like it. Their relationship was irreparably damaged. Berle's upbringing was the reason he wasn't a decent parent. In every way, his mother was a stage parent. She disrupted his personal life and only gave a damn about his work. She even ended their relationship if they went on more than 3 dates. When he was younger, Berle was constantly searching for something he couldn't find, a romantic partner. With his own son, he committed the same errors. He belonged to a long line of disrespectful family members. Once regarded as Mr. Television, Milton Berle received shocking news in April 2001 that left him and everyone else who continued to talk about his good old days in disbelief. Doctors diagnosed him with stomach cancer. A tumor had been growing inside of him. According to his wife and doctors, it was progressing so slowly that it wouldn't seriously hurt him for another 10 to 12 years. He appeared to have time to reflect on his life and perhaps make one final attempt to turn things around. However, that optimism proved unfounded. Less than a year later, on March 27, 2002, Berle passed away. He was 93. He passed away from cancer far sooner than anyone had anticipated. It served as a harsh reminder of how swiftly life and death can change. Without the applause he once received, the guy who had 80% of Americans glued to their TVs on Tuesday evenings was now dying alone. Many individuals were perplexed by Berle's choices. He declined to have surgery. His wife, Lorna Adams, advised him to consider it, but Berle refused. Like the doctors, he thought the improvement was slow. He didn't believe the procedure was worth the discomfort and recovery time at his age. His decision was regarded as courageous by some. For some, it was a sign of surrender. He made the decision to stop fighting after years of fighting for attention and laughs. However, the cancer killed him within a year, rather than waiting 10 years. They were rendered even sadder by the way Berle was handled in his final months by many in the entertainment industry. Stores would close early to allow customers to catch his show as early as the 1940s. But in the end, the same company didn't really notice his decline. He did not receive much recognition or a farewell call from young comedians whose careers were influenced by his innovative work. His funeral was attended by a few of his old acquaintances. The Hollywood quiet says it all: attention passes quickly and celebrity is short-lived. The last time Berle made headlines was when he and RuPaul attended the MTV Video Music Awards in 1993. It was supposed to be humorous, an homage to Berle's previous drag shows, but instead it became awkward and cruel. Berle's jokes were ineffective. RuPaul retorted, "You used to wear dresses, now you wear diapers." Following that, Berle allegedly went too far by caressing RuPaul's chest without her consent and using offensive and inappropriate language. The conflict behind the scenes exacerbated the situation. In addition to hurting RuPaul's relationship with MTV, it gave the impression that Berle was out of touch with modern society.